In Puerto Rico, a wave of violent extremism was on the rise. A militant group, driven by a relentless pursuit of independence at any cost, carried out ruthless attacks against U.S. personnel and law enforcement. These insurgents ambushed a police officer, assaulted a bus filled with unarmed Navy workers, and even opened fire on American sailors in broad daylight. Their ultimate goal? To sever ties with the United States and establish an independent communist state, despite the fact that the vast majority of Puerto Ricans oppose such a radical shift. I'm Jim Carlstrom, a former head of the FBI office in New York. In 1983, the FBI's agents in San Juan found themselves personally affected when these militants launched a direct attack on our bureau. Our team had to rely on patience, skill, and every investigative resource at our disposal to break the case open. At the time, Puerto Rico was home to over 3 million U.S. citizens, yet only a small faction harbored anti-American sentiments. The situation took a deadly turn on August 24, 1978. That evening, 2 Puerto Rican police officers stopped to assist a couple whose car had broken down. Just as they approached, 3 heavily armed men emerged from the shadows. One officer instinctively reached for his weapon, but was gunned down immediately. His partner, realizing the overwhelming odds, chose to surrender. The attackers dragged the surviving officer into a nearby forest, stripped him of his uniform, and bound him. Meanwhile, they commandeered the police car, using it to transport the stranded couple, possibly as a cover for their escape. But just as they prepared to leave, headlights appeared in the distance. Thinking quickly, one of the assailants flashed the badge of the fallen officer and ordered the driver continue, insisting it was a police matter. However, the men in the approaching vehicle turned out to be undercover officers. They found the situation suspicious, particularly when a supposed officer refused their assistance. Playing it safe, they retreated to a secure distance and called for reinforcements before returning to investigate. By the time the agents arrived, the criminals had vanished. They searched the area thoroughly, securing the crime scene and combing through the dense forest. Eventually, they discovered the bound officer, alive but shaken, and the lifeless body of his partner. 5 days later, an unknown group claimed responsibility for the attack. This marked the moment when the case became an FBI priority. The FBI's field office in San Juan analyzed the group's detailed confession, which included a diagram reconstructing the shooting from their perspective. They framed the attack as self-defense, claiming the slain officer had overreacted. This was unusual, said Special Agent Horn. Militant groups rarely took credit for killing law enforcement officers, let alone provided detailed explanations. It seemed like they were trying to justify their actions. The organization called itself the Ejército Popular Boricua, EPB, translating to Puerto Rican People's Army. However, they were more commonly known as the macheteros, a name derived from sugarcane laborers wielding machetes. They portrayed themselves as a movement representing the working-class people of Puerto Rico. But in reality, they were an extremist faction with little popular support. Fewer than 5% of the island's population shared their vision of independence. At the crime scene, investigators collected 9mm bullet casings, but found no fingerprints or fiber evidence. Witness sketches of the assailants were vague and unhelpful. With little else to go on, the FBI turned to surveillance. Agents closely monitored known radical groups, hoping they might lead them to the macheteros. Meanwhile, Puerto Rican law enforcement pursued a different strategy, planting informants within university-based extremist circles to identify those affiliated with the group. 2 months passed without any significant breakthroughs. Then, in October 1979, the macheteros struck again. A powerful explosion rocked the U.S. Customs building in San Juan. Though no one was injured, the bombing sent a clear message. The customs building represented U.S. authority over Puerto Rico's imports, a perfect symbolic target. As expected, the macheteros promptly issued a statement claiming responsibility. The FBI and local police intensified their efforts. But before they could make headway, the group carried out its boldest attack yet. A month and a half later, on a quiet morning at a U.S. Navy base in San Juan, 18 unarmed naval workers boarded a bus to start their shift. As the vehicle rolled through the base, a car suddenly blocked its path. Within moments, a van pulled up beside it. From inside, gunmen unleashed a hail of automatic gunfire. The attackers aimed strategically, directing their bullets at the lower half of the bus, exactly where panicked passengers would dive for cover. 2 men were killed, and 9 others were critically wounded. This was a reckless and brutally executed attack, recalled Agent Horn, who led the investigation. It was the first time the Macheteros had carried out a coordinated, premeditated assault, and it changed everything. Crime scene investigators recovered shell casings and traced the van's license plate. But the vehicle had been stolen months prior, and once again, there were no fingerprints or fiber traces. The FBI's forensic lab in San Juan examined the ammunition casings and confirmed that most rounds were fired from a .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun and a .223 caliber rifle. Analysts compared the markings on these casings with those from other unsolved cases, but found no matches. The Macheteros taunted law enforcement by releasing yet another statement to the media, boasting about their attack. It was clear they were growing more audacious. Determined to shut them down, the FBI called for reinforcements from the mainland. With additional personnel, agents ramped up surveillance on individuals suspected of having ties to the Macheteros. The goal was simple: track their every move and separate the true operatives from mere loudmouth sympathizers. While the FBI worked tirelessly to identify the culprits, the Macheteros made it clear that they were ready to escalate their war. Their next target? The FBI itself. With the Macheteros growing bolder in their attacks, the FBI knew it had to adapt. The recent wave of violence, including the bus massacre, had shaken the island, and tensions were rising. The agency needed a new approach. Rather than simply tracking the militants, agents started focusing on how they funded their operations. That's when an interesting pattern emerged: a string of recent highly coordinated, well-armed armored truck heists. The robberies were executed with military precision. The attackers would strike, seize the cash, and disappear without a trace, leaving no fingerprints, no DNA, and no direct links to known suspects. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario recalled, "We analyzed abandoned getaway vehicles, but they were all registered under fake names. We kept running into dead ends." Investigators strongly suspected that the Macheteros were behind these robberies, but without direct evidence, they couldn't make arrests. Their suspicions were confirmed months later, when the group sent a letter to the media claiming responsibility for a $300,000 heist. However, the FBI was convinced that this was just the tip of the iceberg. They had reason to believe the militants had stolen far more than they admitted. Through informants, the FBI learned that the Macheteros were being led by Filiberto Ojeda Rios, a longtime Puerto Rican militant. Ojeda wasn't just another radical. In the 1960s, he had trained in Cuba as a communist agent before returning to Puerto Rico. By the early 1970s, he was already a known extremist. He had even been convicted for a hotel bombing in 1970, but he managed to escape custody and vanish underground. For over a decade, the FBI had been hunting him. Now, they finally had confirmation he was the mastermind behind the Macheteros. This was the kind of man capable of organizing a disciplined, deadly group like the Macheteros, said FBI Special Agent Rick Nolan. With Ojeda in charge, their actions made a lot more sense. The FBI doubled down on surveillance, closely monitoring anyone suspected of being connected to him. But before they could close in, the Macheteros struck again, this time at an unprecedented level. One morning, as FBI agents prepared for a routine surveillance operation, an urgent call came in. Multiple U.S. National Guard fighter jets had exploded at a military base in Puerto Rico. Agent Candelario immediately rushed to the airfield. The scene was pure devastation. It looked like a war zone, he recalled. Some of our agents had served in Vietnam, and they said it reminded them of a battlefield. The explosions destroyed 9 fighter jets and severely damaged 2 more, causing an estimated $45 million in damages. Miraculously, no one was injured, but the message was clear. As investigators combed through the wreckage, they found a chilling clue: a machete marked with the letters APB, the official name of the Macheteros. "They were taunting us," one FBI analyst remarked. Upon closer examination, bomb experts determined that the jets had been sabotaged using homemade pipe bombs, which were placed in their air intake systems, exhaust nozzles, and landing gear compartments. The FBI suspected an inside job and questioned every National Guard personnel member. But after thorough investigations, they found no evidence of collusion. Once again, the macheteros had managed to execute a highly sophisticated attack without leaving a trail. A deadly ambush on U.S. sailors. Just days after the jet bombings, a group of American sailors from the USS Pensacola was visiting San Juan when another attack took place. As they walked across a bridge, a van suddenly pulled up beside them. Without warning, gunmen inside opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets. One sailor was killed instantly. 3 others were critically wounded. Minutes later, a Puerto Rican radio station received an anonymous call. "This is the Macheteros. We are responsible." FBI Special Agent Candelario arrived at the scene and was struck by the brutality. "I saw the body of that young sailor and immediately thought of his parents. He was unarmed. He had nothing to do with Puerto Rican politics. But because he was a member of the U.S. military, he became a target." Back at the FBI lab, forensic experts examined the bullet casing from the attack. They found something significant. The same .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun used in the bus attack months earlier had been used in this ambush as well. This meant that at least one of the macheteros' weapons had been involved in multiple killings, a crucial link in the investigation. With each attack, the militants were growing more emboldened, but nothing prepared the FBI for what happened next. On the night before Halloween, a massive explosion rocked the FBI field office in San Juan. The blast was so powerful, we thought the bomb had gone off inside the building, recalled Special Agent Luis Rodriguez, a bomb technician who was one of the first to inspect the site. As he surveyed the damage, Rodriguez noticed a key detail. The windows had been blown inward, not outward. This meant that the explosion had originated outside, which led him to search the surrounding area. Not far from the building, he made a startling discovery: the propulsion system of an American anti-tank rocket. It was a U.S.-manufactured Lohr rocket, a weapon designed to penetrate armored vehicles. The FBI had never seen anything like this before in Puerto Rico. Rodriguez immediately noted that the weapon's serial number was intact. "We realized that whoever fired this rocket must have been nearby," he explained. A Lohr rocket has a range of only 350 yards, so the attacker was within close range. Agents canvassed the area and found a woman who had witnessed the attack. She described how a man had walked onto her property, shouldered a large weapon, and fired it at the FBI building. Moments later, he fled in an SUV that was followed by a second car. With this lead, agents scoured the neighborhood and soon found 2 abandoned vehicles matching her description. "We knocked on doors and asked residents if they had seen anything," said Special Agent Mark Hunter. One neighbor recalled something suspicious. "I saw the guy get out one of the cars and wipe down the door handles, like he was trying to erase fingerprints." It was exactly what the FBI had hoped for, proof that these were the right vehicles. As forensic teams secured the abandoned cars for further examination, the macheteros struck again, this time in the media. They proudly claimed responsibility for the attack on the FBI. This attack was personal. For the first time, the macheteros had directly targeted the very agents hunting them down. The FBI was determined to bring them to justice. The first real breakthrough came when Rodriguez traced the rocket launcher's serial number. Investigators discovered that some American-made weapons had been abandoned in Vietnam during the U.S. withdrawal. Eventually, a shipment of U.S. arms was transported from North Vietnam to Cuba. This led the FBI to a critical theory. The macheteros had acquired their heavy weaponry from Cuba. Meanwhile, forensic teams painstakingly examined the 2 abandoned getaway cars. They found no usable fingerprints on the exterior. But then, under one of the door panels, they made a game-changing discovery: a single, intact fingerprint. FBI Special Agent Hunter knew this was their best lead yet. That fingerprint from the getaway car gave us hope. It was the first major break we had. The FBI knew that the fingerprint found in the abandoned getaway car could be the breakthrough they had been waiting for. After running it through their database, They identified it as belonging to Avelino Gonzalez, a known radical with suspected ties to macheteros. Unfortunately, while the evidence confirmed his involvement, it wasn't enough for an immediate arrest. The FBI debated whether to put him under surveillance, but there was a problem. Gonzalez had likely gone underground after the attack. Surveillance operations required significant resources, with multiple agents and vehicles shadowing a single target around the clock. If he had already disappeared, following him would be a dead end. That meant they needed another strategy. Instead of focusing solely on Gonzalez, the team looked for a better surveillance candidate, someone who was still active and might unknowingly lead them deeper into the organization. As agents dismantled one of the getaway vehicles, they discovered a critical clue hidden inside a door panel, a faded, crumpled traffic ticket. Due to Puerto Rico's humidity, the paper had partially stuck to the interior. Most of it was illegible, but one crucial detail remained intact: the ticket's identification number. Agent Candelario immediately ran the number through the Puerto Rican Department of Motor Vehicles. The ticket was issued to Pedro Ramirez Cesar Almodovar. It seemed like a routine lead until the FBI cross-checked Almodovar's records. There was a major problem. Pedro Almodovar did not exist. His birth certificate matched that of a deceased child, meaning someone had stolen the identity. This was a red flag. FBI agents knew that militants often use fake identities to stay under the radar. The question was, who was actually using this name? They photocopied his driver's license picture hundreds of times and distributed it across their network, asking if anyone recognized a man. No one did. Determined to get answers, Agent Rodriguez went to the address listed on Almodovar's license. It led him to another location, where a woman with a Cuban accent answered the door. She insisted she didn't know anyone named Pedro Almodovar. Rodriguez didn't believe her. He pulled out the photo and held it up. "Do you know this man?" he asked. The moment she saw the picture, her face turned pale. She quickly shook her head. "No, I don't know him," she stammered. That was all the confirmation the FBI needed. She was lying. Back at headquarters, the agents ran her name through a terrorism watch list. That's when they made a startling discovery. She was related to the family of Filiberto Ojeda Rios, the leader of the macheteros. The FBI now had a strong suspicion. The man in the photo was Ojeda himself. They compared his known photographs with the picture on the fake license. The resemblance was there, but no one could confirm it with certainty. Since the militants had likely been tipped off by the visit, the FBI knew the house would no longer be useful for surveillance. Instead, they shifted focus back to the fingerprint found in the getaway car. Months had passed since the FBI started tracking the macheteros, and agents believed another attack was inevitable. They had to move fast. Their next step was tailing Avelino Gonzalez. The team operated under strict rules. If they lost their target within 30 minutes, they would call off the pursuit and try again another day. One evening, agents noticed Gonzalez driving in circles, seemingly checking if he was being followed. He was looking for a tail, an agent later recalled. That told us everything. These guys knew exactly what they were doing. Eventually, Gonzalez stopped, and an older man got into his car. The agents didn't recognize him. Rather than risk spooking their primary target, they let Gonzalez go and followed the unknown man instead. He drove to a 2-story house on the outskirts of San Juan. The agents rented an apartment in the building across the street and began a 24-hour stakeout. Checking the mailbox name and the car registration didn't provide any useful information. The name was fake. The man was extremely cautious. He used different public payphones for every call, even making multiple calls from different phones on the same night. The FBI needed his fingerprints, but getting them without raising suspicion was tricky. So they came up with a bold plan. One evening, after the man finished a phone call, an undercover agent walked into the booth and cut off the telephone receiver. Puerto Rico had a high vandalism rate, so a broken payphone wouldn't seem suspicious. FBI forensic experts analyzed the receiver and found several clear fingerprints. Moments later, the lab confirmed the results. They belonged to Filiberto Ojeda Rios. The FBI had just confirmed the exact location of the most wanted man in Puerto Rico. Agents were ecstatic. It was like Christmas for us, Special Agent Candelario later said. For the first time, they had Ojeda right where they wanted him. But rather than arrest him immediately, they decided to keep watching. If they acted too soon, they would only take down one man. Their true goal was to dismantle the entire Machitero network. The surveillance would continue. But now, the stakes were higher than ever. With Filiberto Ojeda Rios' location confirmed, the FBI intensified its surveillance, knowing that he was a key to dismantling the Macheteros. But tracking him wasn't easy. He was extremely cautious, rarely staying in one place long, and always checking for potential tails. Agents had to be meticulous, ensuring they remained undetected. As they monitored Ojeda, the FBI discovered another crucial lead: a coded list of names and phone numbers in the documents seized from the Macheteros. The militants clearly used an encryption system to hide identities, making it impossible to read the records at first glance. Special Agent Hunter took on the challenge of cracking the code. The breakthrough came when they intercepted a phone call where Ojeda mentioned a code name alongside a real phone number. Using this as a reference point, Hunter tested different numerical patterns, adjusting digits to see how the encoded numbers were created. I spent hours playing with the sequences, trying to figure out if they added numbers, subtracted them, or used some other pattern, she later recalled. After multiple failed attempts, she finally found the solution. The phone code was cracked. I ran straight to my team and said, "You won't believe this. I've cracked it." Hunter recalled. With this discovery, the FBI could now decode every single phone number in the Machiteros' records. That meant they could identify each militant by name, uncovering the full network. This was an intelligence breakthrough, allowing them to install more wiretaps on phones used by the militants. The intercepted calls provided even more valuable insights. One recurring topic stood out. The Macheteros were having financial disputes. Agents listened as Ojeda and other members argued about money. Some of them wanted to fund more attacks, while others wanted to strengthen their ties to Cuba. Then came a shocking revelation. The FBI intercepted a conversation confirming that the Macheteros had sent $2.2 million to Cuba as a gesture of goodwill. That raised a critical question. Where did all this money come from? The agents cross-referenced all recorded conversations about money with known bank robberies and armored truck heists in Puerto Rico. Something didn't add up. The total amount stolen in local crimes didn't come close to the $6.8 million they were arguing about. That meant there had to be another major, undiscovered source of cash. Determined to find answers, the FBI sent an urgent request to all U.S. field offices, asking if any unsolved multimillion-dollar robberies had occurred recently. The response came from Hartford, Connecticut. A year earlier, an armored truck driver had drugged his colleagues and stolen $7.2 million in cash, making it the second-largest cash heist in U.S. history at the time. The suspect? A Puerto Rican national. That's when everything clicked. The Macheteros had carried out one of the biggest cash robberies in American history, but had never taken credit for it, because it was meant to fund their operations. The FBI immediately reviewed all recorded calls where Ojeda or other members mentioned Aguila Blanca, a term they had previously struggled to decode. Now, it made sense. The Aguila Blanca operation was an attack. It was a $7.2 million armored truck heist in Connecticut. This changed everything, an agent later recalled. They weren't just attacking the FBI, the police, and the military. They had committed one of the biggest robberies in U.S. history. That gave the FBI and federal prosecutors a new advantage. Rather than charge the Macheteros only for murders in Puerto Rico, where local courts might be lenient, they could prosecute them for a federal crime in Connecticut, a place with no sympathy for their cause. But before the FBI could finish gathering evidence, Ojeda vanished. One day, the agents monitoring him realized he had disappeared. He had either gone into hiding or been tipped off. Losing him was a disaster. Without Ojeda, the Macheteros would go back into the shadows. The FBI needed another way to strike. Rather than chasing a ghost, they turned their attention to Juan Segarra, one of Ojeda's most trusted operatives. Segarra was deeply involved in the Macheteros' finances. If they could bring him down, they could unravel the group from the inside. They already had a wiretap in his home, but there was a problem. The bug wasn't working. Agents decided to sneak into his house while he was away to repair the device. Everything was going smoothly until a sudden warning came over the radio. The green car is approaching the house. A known Machitero member had just pulled up outside. The agents inside had only seconds to react. Without time to escape, they ran to the bedroom, searching for a place to hide. One agent tried to squeeze into a closet, but there were no doors. If the militant walked in and looked left, he would see them hiding in plain sight. They drew their weapons, knowing that if he discovered them, it would turn into a gunfight. The man walked into the house and called out, "Is anyone here?" Silence. The agents didn't move. He checked a few rooms, but never looked into the bedroom. After a few tense minutes, he walked out. As soon as the agents heard the front door close, they bolted for the back door and escaped. Later that night, they intercepted a conversation where the militant told Segarra about his suspicions. The Macheteros searched the entire house for anything unusual. If they had found the FBI's listening device, the entire investigation would have collapsed. But somehow, they overlooked it. The FBI had risked everything to keep their wiretap active, and it paid off. Through the device, agents discovered how Segarra was laundering money. He wasn't doing it alone. His lover in Boston was helping him clean the stolen cash. She wasn't just his girlfriend. She was also a Macheteros member. Her job was to take dirty money from Puerto Rico and make it untraceable in the U.S. That connection gave the FBI what they needed. Probable cause to wiretap her phone as well. As they listened in, they learned that Segarra had traveled to Mexico. This was a problem. He was one of the top targets, and they couldn't risk arresting the others while he was out of reach. They needed to wait until he returned to the U.S. to take down the entire group at once. Weeks passed, and then one night, the Boston wiretap picked up a crucial message. Segarra had left his girlfriend a voicemail. "I'm in Dallas. Call me at this number." The FBI traced the number. It was a payphone at Fort Worth International Airport. They immediately dispatched agents to the terminal. When Segarra picked up the phone to wait for his girlfriend's call, he had no idea that FBI agents were already surrounding him. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, hundreds of FBI agents were gearing up for the biggest operation yet. Dozens of simultaneous raids were about to take place, a final attempt to bring down the Macheteros once and for all. With Juan Segarra's location confirmed in Dallas, the FBI prepared to take him into custody. Agents monitored the airport payphone where he had made his last call, waiting for the right moment. As soon as he picked up the receiver to await a return call from his girlfriend, they moved in. Segarra had no time to react. He was surrounded. The arrest was swift and without resistance. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, the FBI had orchestrated a massive, simultaneous takedown of the Macheteros network. For weeks, hundreds of agents had been secretly flown in from the mainland. Helicopters, armored vehicles, and special operations teams were all in place. Their goal was to hit over 30 different locations at the exact same time, preventing militants from alerting each other. The most important target was Filiberto Ojeda Rios. The FBI believed he was hiding in a heavily secured compound. Given his history, agents expected him to fight to the death rather than surrender. At dawn, FBI SWAT teams surrounded the house and used loudspeakers to order Ojeda to come out. Silence. Then, suddenly, a burst of automatic gunfire erupted from an upper window. One FBI agent, positioned near the entrance, was struck in the face by a ricocheting bullet. Agents pulled back, evacuating the injured man while calling in reinforcements. But they knew they had no choice. They had to go back in. Inside the house, Ojeda was preparing for his last stand. He appeared at the top of the staircase, gripping a .45 caliber Uzi submachine gun slung over his shoulder. Even more concerning, his left hand was hidden behind his leg. A nearby agent noticed something alarming. Ojeda was holding a semi-automatic pistol. Keeping out of sight, the agent shouted for him to drop the weapon. Ojeda hesitated. When he refused to comply, the agent fired twice. The bullet struck Ojeda's gun, knocking him from his grip, but he was otherwise unharmed. Disarmed and outnumbered, he finally surrendered. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario escorted him out. "I told him, I'm Puerto Rican, just like you. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Ojeda looked at him and replied, Yes, but you are my enemy, and if I have to kill you, I will. Despite his threats, Ojeda was taken into custody without further incident, but his legal battle was just beginning. The FBI had now dismantled the leadership of the Macheteros, but Ojeda's lawyers used every legal tactic possible to delay his trial. For 3 years, his attorneys filed motion after motion, exploiting legal loopholes to slow down the process. Eventually, they argued that Ojeda's right to a speedy trial had been violated, and shockingly, the court granted him bail. Despite FBI objections, he was released under house arrest with an electronic ankle monitor. The agents who had spent years tracking him down were furious. We knew this wouldn't stop him. One FBI investigator later said, that ankle monitor meant nothing. They were right. Ojeda immediately began giving public speeches, calling for renewed support from Macheteros. For the first time in years, he was able to speak freely, no longer in hiding. Meanwhile, his top lieutenants, including Juan Segarra and other Macheteros involved in the $7.2 million robbery, were being convicted and sentenced in Connecticut. A year after his release, Ojeda made a dramatic statement. He removed his ankle monitor in public and disappeared. FBI agents rushed to his home, but it was too late. He had escaped into the mountains, resuming his life as a fugitive. In 1992, a federal court in Connecticut convicted him in absentia for his role in the Macheteros bank robbery. Ojeda was now one of the most wanted fugitives in the United States. But unlike before, he was no longer leading a terrorist network. The FBI had successfully dismantled the Macheteros' power structure. Even in hiding, he remained a symbol of resistance for Puerto Rican independence supporters. For 14 years, Ojeda managed to evade capture, moving between secret locations and staying out of sight. But the FBI wasn't done. They knew it was only a matter of time before they found him again. And this time there would be no escape. For 14 years, Filiberto Ojeda Rios remained a fugitive. He had perfected the art of staying hidden, constantly changing locations and relying on a loyal network of supporters. But the FBI never stopped searching. While the Macheteros were no longer a major operational force, Ojeda had become a symbol for Puerto Rican independence movements. His status as an outlaw only strengthened his influence among radical separatists. FBI agents knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. They just had to wait for the right moment. That moment finally came in 2005. After years of dead-end leads, the FBI received credible intelligence that Ojeda was hiding in a remote farmhouse in Hormigueros, Puerto Rico. Agents carefully planned the operation, knowing that Ojeda was heavily armed and would resist arrest. On September 23, 2005, a special FBI tactical unit moved in on the farmhouse. The date was no coincidence. September 23rd was the anniversary of the 1868 Grito de Lares Rebellion, a historical event in Puerto Rican independence history. Ojeda and his supporters had often commemorated this day, and the FBI believed he would let his guard down, thinking law enforcement wouldn't attack on such an important date. But they were wrong. As agents surrounded the farmhouse, gunfire erupted. Ojeda was ready. He opened fire with an automatic weapon, striking one of the FBI agents. The team was forced to pull back and reassess their approach. The standoff lasted for hours. The agents didn't want to rush in. They had learned from past encounters that Ojeda was willing to die rather than be captured. As night fell, the FBI finally moved in. In the final assault, Ojeda was shot and killed. The 72-year-old militant had fought to the very end. His death sparked outrage among pro-independence activists in Puerto Rico. Some called him a martyr, while others criticized the FBI for the way they handled the operation. But for the FBI, this was the final chapter in a long and complex case. Filiberto Ojeda Rios, the most wanted terrorist in Puerto Rico's history, was dead with his death. The Macheteros were effectively dismantled, and their dream of turning Puerto Rico into a communist state had collapsed. Today, Puerto Ricans continue to debate their political future, but through peaceful democratic processes, not through violence. Thanks to the FBI's relentless pursuit, the people of Puerto Rico were given the freedom to choose their destiny without the threat of terrorism. It had taken nearly 3 decades, but the FBI had finally won.